I'm Ms. Johnson. In October 2003, Charlene Johnson was the youngest female ever elected to serve in the Newfoundland Labrador House of Assembly. Born in Carbonear and raised in the Conception Bay community of Gull Island, Ms. Johnson holds a Bachelor of Science in Forest Engineering from the University of New Brunswick and a Master's of Applied Science in Environmental Engineering from the Royal University of Newfoundland. Ms. Johnson was appointed Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources on July 5, 2006. Re-elected to the House of Assembly on October 9, 2007, Ms. Johnson was appointed Minister of Environment and Conservation on October 30, 2007. On January 13, 2011, Ms. Johnson was appointed Minister of Child, Youth and Family Services. She was re-elected to the House of Assembly on October 11, 2011 and was appointed Minister responsible for the status of women, in addition to her reappointment to the Department of Child, Youth and Family Services. On October 9, 2013, she was appointed Minister of Innovation, Business and Rural Development, Minister responsible for the Office of Public Engagement, Minister responsible for the Research and Development Corporation, and was reappointed Minister responsible for the status of women. On January 29, 2014, she was appointed Minister of Finance and President of Treasury Board and Minister responsible for the Human Resource Secretariat, the Public Service Commission, and the Newfoundland Labrador Liquor Corporation. So would you please join me in welcoming the Honourable Charlene Johnson.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Ross for working with me on a date to do this. It's a real pleasure to be here. It was a beautiful drive this evening, and I would like to give you an update on our budget this year. But before I do that, lower this. I'd just like to speak to you about Ross for a moment, because I know you know how hard he works, but I can tell you from the almost 11 years now that I've been working with him that there is no one more analytical than Ross, and very knowledgeable, goes down deep into the weeds, and you know, when I hear him speak about things going on in Clarenville and his district as a whole, Trinity North, he's on the ground, he's talking to stakeholders. When I was in IBRD, which was a very short-lived portfolio, but enjoyed it while it lasted, and there's some staff here from IBRD. We were out, we had the opportunity to announce funding for the ski hill, and just the knowledge that he has of each project and how intimately involved he gets. It's amazing to see how analytical he is, and I know you all know that because you deal with him a lot, but I just had to say it for myself. It's a real pleasure to work with him. He's not too hard on me as speaker either. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak to your group tonight about Budget 2014. It's really nice to get out and talk to people about the budget, and pre-budget. We do pre-budget consultations, and for me that was a very valuable experience to get out to talk to people about what's important to them and about the work that they're doing on the ground and what their needs were and what their priorities were for Budget 2014 was very, very beneficial, and I was able to bring that back to the caucus table and to the cabinet table. But then post-budget, it's also important to get out around and to sell the budget and to hear what people are having to say, and you know, what we might be able to do differently next time, and those types of things. So these things are very important. As you know, Budget 2014, we had 3 pillars: shared prosperity, fair society, and balanced outlook. And I'd like to highlight some of the investments that fall under each pillar. And most of them are things that are important to people like you in this room: healthcare, education, infrastructure, and so on. But I'll start with balanced outlook, because it's really important that we look to the future and ensure that the future is sustainable for the generations that come behind us. And last year we announced our 10-year sustainability plan, and this budget ensures a balanced approach to supporting continued economic prosperity and social prosperity, but also at the same time ensuring that the picture is sustainable for the long term. And since 2003, we've worked very hard to improve the province's fiscal situation. At the same time, we have balanced the responsibility with ensuring that we make important investments in healthcare, education, and infrastructure, but we also always remain committed to a balanced outlook. And one of the ways we hope to continue is through our continued focus on a strong economy. When you look at where our economy was in 2003, the growth is quite remarkable, and certainly this region is seeing that beehive of activity that's going on. It's quite something as to what's going on in this region. And there's a lot of details in the budget news releases and on the website. But when you look at our economic indicators, we led the entire country. We were the province to lead the entire country when it comes to GDP and other economic indicators. And so we're very pleased with that, and it's expected to continue to grow in the upcoming year. So that's always good news for people all around the province, and especially in this area. As I said, leading up to the budget, we did do pre-budget consultations around the province. There were 12 sessions in 11 locations, and really important to hear from people what they're doing in their communities to make them stronger, and how, really important to hear from the volunteers, especially how they're making a difference in everyday lives. And this is Volunteer Week, so before I continue on, I know a lot of you have important jobs in the roles that you play, but I'm sure outside of that you do a lot in terms of volunteer work. So, thank you for all that you do on behalf of the provincial government, because our communities wouldn't thrive and survive like they do without all of the volunteer hours that people such as yourselves put into their communities. So when we were putting together Budget 2014, we very much considered the priorities that people have identified. When Premier Marshall was sworn in, one of the things that he said was, we're here to listen to the people, so tell us what you think. Tell us if you think we're doing something right, and especially tell us if you think we're doing something that can be improved upon. And that's why it was so important to listen to people in the pre-budget consultations, and I think you'll see when I go through some of the highlights that we truly did listen to what people had to say in pre-budget. And I have to say the attendance for pre-budget this year was incredible, and I think because there was a lot of outcomes in the budget as to what people had to say, I'm expecting the attendance next year to be even better. And if I'm still in this portfolio, one never knows, and you see my background there, the switching around that we get to do as ministers. If I'm still here, I'd like to do them earlier this year and do them in the fall, and have more time to take back some of the suggestions and truly analyze them. So in Budget 2013, we committed to returning to surplus in 2015-16, and I'm pleased to say we're still on target to achieve that goal. Not only do we predict a surplus next year, but we predict a surplus the year after as well. To reach this goal, and while at the same time providing for public services, responsible investment, and maintaining a competitive tax environment, we are forecasting a deficit this year of $537.9 million. This is down by $112.6 million that was projected last year. That's the good news. But we still do have a deficit, and we need to be cognizant of that. But as I said, we're back into surplus next year, and I talked to economists and others in the economy field, and they said it's really important to have a long-term view and not to spend a lot when revenue is high, cut a lot when it's low, just to do it on an even keel and stick to your long-term plan. So that was our focus for this year. One of the things that was highlighted in the budget was net debt. This year our net debt will be $9.8 billion. And approximately $7.4 billion of that is due to pension and post-retirement benefits. So that's 74% of our net debt is made up of pension and post-retirement benefits. And if not dealt with, that will grow to 85% of our net debt by 2016-2017. So I did highlight that in the budget speech, and I did mention in the budget speech that we are committed to continuing dialogue with the unions to try and work together to find a solution to this problem so that in the future it is sustainable. And it's not just a union issue though, there's been a lot of commentary around this, and this really is an issue for all taxpayers in the province. But we're continuing discussions. I'm actually meeting with them next week, and hopefully with meaningful and collaborative discussions we will come to a solution that can be lived with by all. Certainly the growth in our economy over the last number of years, last decade for sure, has helped the province build a strong financial foundation. And in the last 10 years prior to this one, we have posted 6 surpluses in 10 years. So we have not had to borrow money for operational purposes since 2004. This year, though, we are projecting that we will have to borrow for this year and for next year, but it's only short-term. It's a short-term measure. It isn't a long-term trend because we will be back into surplus next year. And the other important thing to note is that we're not borrowing for day-to-day operations. We're borrowing for much-needed infrastructure. We have some debt coming due, about $350 million worth of debt coming due. And we are also borrowing to invest in Nalcor. And that's an investment in our future. That's a revenue generator. And we'll certainly reap the rewards of that down the road. And I've seen some of the numbers, and just to think of my 4-year-old daughter, when she is in 20 years from now, when you see the returns coming from the investments in Nalcor, not only in Muskrat Falls, but in all the oil projects, the future is so bright for them. It's going to be quite something to watch unfold. One of our key commitments is to maintain competitive tax rates, and this certainly supports economic growth. Since 2006, our government has decreased taxes, and this has put hundreds of millions of dollars back into taxpayers' pockets. This year, with the initiatives we've put in the budget this year, $600 million in taxes will go back into everyday individuals. And we're very proud of that, and it keeps the economy cycle going. Under the next heading of shared prosperity, I thought I would talk about that and what we do in our budget to promote growth both provincially and locally. And everybody fully appreciates that we have to have well-developed transportation infrastructure, such as our highways, our bridges, our ferries, and these are critical to having successful communities. This year, we are pleased to be investing $81 million for the enhancement and rehabilitation of provincial roads, highways, and bridges to provide a safe, efficient, and effective transportation network. And for the first time that I can recall, and perhaps you can recall, Ross, as well, is that we have got early tenders out the door. And we've heard from the construction industry over and over again. With such a short season in our province, and we're certainly seeing that this year, I don't know if winter's ever going to end, and we've had 4 winters in one winter. You know, it's important that we get the tenders out early. What that does is gets more work done, but it gets us locked in at a better price. So those early tenders were a wonderful thing, and $30 million was announced to kickstart the season back in January. The $81 million for roads is the largest budget we've ever had for provincial roads ever in the history of the province. And a lot of work has been done over the last 10 years, but as we all know, and I'm sure all of you in your jobs travel just as much as I do, there is more work that needs to be done, so a big push put on that. And a little offside of the roads, we are also investing $2 million this year, increasing our investment into brush cutting. And hopefully, again, you all travel a lot, and I know for me, one of the best measures we can do to reduce loose vehicle collisions is to clear the brush off the roads. I know it certainly helps me in my driving. So we have increased that by $1 million this year. And it's one of the things that I heard from a lot of people around the province that you're doing great work with it and keep it up, and you can already see the harvesters out on the side of the roads working and are driving today. Another really important thing to communities, especially communities like Clarenville and the surrounding ones in this region, is municipal infrastructure. And this year we announced $200 million over 3 years in municipal capital works to benefit communities, both large and small. And again this year, Minister Kent did an early announcement to get tenders out the door as well. Same thing with your roads. You're putting water and sewer pipes in the ground. It's quite difficult to do it with all of the snow down, but it's important to get the tenders out and get the bids in so that when the snow does clear and the frost clears up, that we can get going. just on that point about winter, because I hate winter, but I shouldn't say that in Clarendon, I know, with the ski hill, and I was very enthused when I came and announced the rumor. We went out and got our picture knee deep in snow. But every morning my daughter wakes up and opens up the curtains to see if it's summer yet. And we had a lot of snow. It's the big calm before the storm, before budget day, and the storm that night before was no indication of how the budget was going to be, because I got asked that question. But she said, Mom, I know I'm not allowed to use the word hate, but I really hate winter. And I couldn't argue with her. As long as you don't say it about people, then that's fine. So I think we're all tired of winter, and early tenders are important so we can get the season going really fast. One of the other things that I heard going around the province, and caucus members have heard it, and Ross and I have had conversations, is about supporting our volunteers, and particularly our volunteer firefighters. We have 5,900 volunteer firefighters that keep us safe and do a lot more in terms of firefighting than just your average putting out a fire. They're such dedicated volunteers in their community. So this year we have increased the budget for trucks and firefighting equipment by $3.5 million, bringing it to over $5 million. And again, this is the largest investment ever for trucks and firefighting equipment ever in the province, and much needed, certainly. One of the other things that certainly would be important to Chamber of Commerce, such as yourself and the businesses that are members of it, is that we really wanted to do something to support small businesses in the province this year. So in our budget, we are reducing our small business corporate income tax rate to 3%. This brings it down from 4%. So we now tie Nova Scotia for the lowest in Atlantic Canada. 6,000 businesses will benefit from this reduction, and it's a total of $4.5 million that will go back into the pockets of businesses to reinvest in your business, to help offset the increase in minimum wage, to do whatever you see fit to do. The other thing that we announced in the budget this year under IBRD, which was something I really drove when I was there, was the venture capital piece, and really important to be in the game. I know when I used to visit, I didn't get to do it a lot because I wasn't in IBRD very long, but the little time that I did, businesses would say, you're not in the Atlantic Venture Fund, and we come here from, this particular group is from California, and we come to deal with one region, and you're not in on it. So that's going to mean a lot for small business, not necessarily small businesses, but businesses who are in the pre-commercial phase that have an idea and it's difficult to get the funding. So this will really help jumpstart that, and really important to all parts of the province, but particularly in rural Newfoundland. There's a lot of creative businesses and opportunities, and I had the opportunity in IBRD to visit Subsea, and it's amazing that these two young, I think they're less than 25 years old, just guessing, but they're selling underwater cameras all over the world and just expanding at a rapid pace. So we need to invest in our entrepreneurs, and that keeps the economy going, and I was really pleased with the venture capital piece, and I'm sure for businesses like yourself that's exciting as well. Fishing industry, obviously, is a very important industry. It's very important where I come from, probably the highest landings in the province. And our fishing industry now is worth over $1 billion each year, and the prospects for growth are tremendous. The other thing, the opportunity to do in my short time in IBRD was to announce the CETA deal, which is the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the European Union. And at long last, this will virtually eliminate barriers to the export of Newfoundland and Labrador fish products going into the largest sea market in the world. So the opportunities are going to be quite something to see, and it's really going to change the shape of our fishery for the better. To support responsible resource management and development in the province's energy sector, we've also included $552 million investment into Nalcor. This is for both oil and gas activities, as well as the Muskrat Falls project, which I said earlier, we will reap great returns in the years ahead. And We've been in politics now, well, Ross, you've been in longer than me, but I know my goal is I can't wait till 2017, and I truly hope that I get reelected so I can be there to flip that switch when that starts up. And it's a real game changer for our province, not only for an environmental perspective, but from an economic perspective. And the fact that we're actually going to be finally connected to the grid in North America is a long time coming. This brings me to the third pillar in our speech, and that's fair society. And as Premier Marshall said when he was sworn in, we must always aspire to build a more fair and just society. And one of the ways we are working to achieve this is by making post-secondary education more accessible and affordable for all. Since 2005, we have invested $282 million to freeze tuition at both Memorial and College of North Atlantic. I was invited to an event on Friday past. The Canadian Federation of Students called up on Thursday. They said they were throwing a end of semester party, and exams were coming up this week, and they wanted to celebrate our budget. And I just kind of shook my head, because you don't get requests like that very often to go to groups to celebrate the budget. Usually we're asking to go out and talk to people, but they invited us. And a tremendous turnout. And Michael Walsh said that we are the envy of the entire country for our tuition fees, but we also announced in the budget loans to grants, and we will be the only province in the country that will have upfront base needs grants. And I'm one lady there, and she was on CBC, or one young woman. She said, I thought it was an April Fool's joke, and then I started reading more about it, and I saw it was really true. And another young woman talked about how she's a couple of years away from graduating, but how it really changes your life for you, because when you come out, you have a mortgage payment. Your student loan is like a mortgage payment, car payment. So this was really going to help them kickstart their career and help them to have families earlier. And it was just an amazing announcement. So we did announce $5.1 million this year to continue the tuition freeze. And then, as I said, we are eliminating provincial student loans and replacing them with upfront grants that do not have to be repaid. And I don't know about some of you in the room, but I know that for many of us, we could have only dreamt that this type of student aid was in place when we were students, because I know before my time, there were grants, and then during my time, there were not grants. And now there are grants again, so there's some in the room that fell into that, like myself. And you know, with 70,000 jobs opening up in Newfoundland and Labrador, we have been working very proactively to prepare people to ensure that the jobs are filled and our residents have the qualifications to fill them. So big focus on post-secondary, but then the next step is the apprenticeship program. And just a little bit about that, because the apprenticeship program was sunsetting this year, so we had to make a decision as to whether or not we would continue with it. And when you look at the fact that we have helped 950 apprentices and 450 employers in a very short time, only since 2011, it was an easy decision to continue with the apprenticeship wage subsidy, as well as $39 million in the Department of AES to continue developing a skilled workforce this year. And I know that's very important for this area. And last night I spoke in Arnold's Cove and heard firsthand about the examples of how the apprenticeship program is working, and they have several students now at the final year, and will soon be journey persons. And they were very quick to brag how some of them are women too, because they know that really, really pleases me to hear that. So very important for this area. Reducing poverty has certainly been one of our government's highest priorities, and we brought in our poverty reduction about 8 years ago. Provinces from across the country were contacting us about the strategy. It has been so effective, and it's really important that we continue to invest in this area. This year, we are investing $170 million this year into poverty reduction. That will now bring our investment into poverty reduction to over $1 billion since 2006. And we address poverty on many fronts, and we recognize that the most vulnerable people are too often forgotten. I remember one lady at pre-budget consultation, and One of the things that she talked about, she used to work, and for certain reasons she couldn't work anymore and ended up on income support. And her story was a remarkable one, and she talked about how we need to increase income support rates. We need to do more around rent supplements. And one of the things that really struck home is when she talked about coming off income support and getting back out into the workforce, because we do have such tremendous opportunities in the province. And we provide a drug card for 6 months. And she said, really, when you're coming off income support, trying to establish yourself, get on your feet, you really need a year. And so in this year's budget, we did extend the drug coverage by another 6 months. And the self-confidence that people get when they go back into the workforce from income support, you can't put a price tag on that. But when you look at these will be contributing to the society, contributing to the much-needed workforce, those dollars will pay off for us in the long term anyway when it comes to taxes. And we also increased the income support rates by 5% this year. So I know that group, Citizens Voice, when they spoke, they were really pleased to hear that they were truly listened to in pre-budget. We also made some changes to the low-income tax reduction. We introduced in 2005 a low-income tax reduction to ease the burden for people, and this year we're going to ease the burden for even more. The low-income tax reduction income thresholds were increased this year, so we will be eliminating provincial income tax for individuals with net income up to $18,547, and for families with net income up to $31,362. And to put that in real terms, for a family that is netting about $32,000 a year, that means $463 more in their pockets annually. And I know directly from what people have said to me that $463 goes a long way when you have a family income of $32,000. We've also made investments into seniors in this year's budget, and seniors, as we all know, are very highly valued members of our community. They've made lifetime contributions to our economy, and yet many of them live on low fixed incomes. And I know Premier was really big on this one, and so with this year's budget we gave the 4th increase since 2003 for the seniors benefit, and as a result seniors will receive in October, which is annually when the check comes out, $1,036, and that's the highest amount they've ever received. That's up from $350 in 2003. To support inclusion by addressing the transportation barriers faced by many people with mobility-related disabilities, we are continuing to invest in our vehicle accessibility program. And again, this one was sunsetting, and it's a program where people can apply up to $25,000 per family to retrofit a vehicle. And when you hear, which I have heard and the minister has heard, how this changes people's lives and it changes a family's whole life in terms of what they can do just by having their vehicle retrofitted, it's things that we take for granted. And such a successful program, and one that we wanted to continue with this year. We're also investing in inclusion grants, and these inclusion grants assist non-profit community organizations to make their facilities and events accessible. We're also extending the home modification program for a further 3 years at $9 million. And this program provides financial assistance to homeowners with disabilities and seniors with low to moderate income that require accessibility changes to their residence. And this enables the individuals to remain in their homes for longer periods of time. We're also investing $12 million over the next 3 years to continue with our REAP program. That's the Residential Energy Efficiency Program. And I can certainly tell you that that's a big one for this community, because Ross's CA calls regularly to see when this program is coming out. It assists up to 1,000 clients per year. It allows to do energy retrofits in a home, and it significantly reduces the energy costs. And I've heard that some residences have saved up to 32% a year on their bill. And you know, when you're on a low fixed income, saving $850 a year on your energy bill certainly goes a long way. We are also increasing affordable housing options in the private market by once again expanding the Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation's rent supplement program. This year we are increasing the number of rent supplements by 150, and I know again that this is an issue for Ross's district. We've had conversations on that. This program assists individuals and families on low incomes and individuals with complex needs, and it pays a portion of their rent that exceeds 25% of their household income, up to $800 monthly. In keeping with the provincial goal to reduce poverty and promote self-reliance, and in advance of the results of the homelessness study that we have commissioned, an additional $500,000 will be allocated through Housing Supportive Living Program. This will bring our total investment to $5.3 million in this program to further advance the work of community partners and stakeholders to address homelessness. Housing is certainly one of the greatest challenges that some families and individuals face, and we're very proud of the work that Newfoundland Labrador Housing has been doing, and they've received recognition across the country for the work that they're doing to develop affordable housing programs and options to assist people with disabilities, families and persons with complex needs, seniors, households with low income, and so on. And since 2006, through this program, we have created nearly 1,117 new affordable housing units throughout the province. Now, with all of the prosperity that our province is seeing and this area is seeing, there's certainly some challenges that always come with that. Challenges around crime, and you're seeing more organized crime crop up. So we really wanted to put a focus in this year's budget on that, to make communities safer. To do so, we are investing $4.8 million this year to strengthen our police services. We will be increasing the class size at Memorial University's Police Study Program by 10 new recruits a year. And we have added new positions to our CMP as well to help combat crime. As we all know, and I certainly know working in child, youth and family services and from Ross's time in health, none are more vulnerable in our society than our children, and that is why attending to the needs of particularly vulnerable children has received such attention from our government. This year we have increased, or we will be increasing, the staff in child, youth and family services by 20 new social workers and social work managers. And again, we committed to reducing caseloads, but we are seeing increases in crime. So that is why it's so critical to invest in this area. One of the best things we can do for our children is to ensure that childcare is available for those who need it, and I know that's an issue for this area. When I was in Child and Youth Family Services, I was out here, and we did do some investments into an initial study to look at the need for childcare in the area. Since 2003, our government has increased the number of regulated childcare spaces by 70%, and in this year's budget we announced approximately $10 million for operating grants. It will change the way childcare, potentially change the way childcare is. It's a voluntary program for current operators to come in, but will certainly focus on quality care and affordable childcare, which is something for any of you in the room who have children know it's not cheap. Our government is committed to providing all of our children with the best possible start in life and the best possible opportunities to be successful in school. Research tells us that there's no better investment that we can make in our children's future than early learning. And interesting that and so it's why it's so important to have diverse backgrounds and diverse people around the cabinet table, because we all come representing different groups of society, and the investments in seniors were really important for Premier Marshall. The investments in children were really important for me, not to say they weren't important for him, but we all come with a different focus and a different lens. And that's why I was so excited to announce full-day kindergarten in the budget this year. We will be investing money this year and next year to start doing the renovations that are required, to purchase the modular classrooms, to hire the engineers. So a lot of work needs to be done. And we really felt that bringing in full-day kindergarten at the same time for all children was the most fair thing to do. So in order to get the schools ready, the earliest possible date it could be ready for was 2016. And this was the highlight of the budget speech for me, to say the least. And even though my daughter's 4 and she won't make it, any of us who have children in the room know how important early learning is. And the other thing that I heard from parents is how difficult it is to get your child from where they are to school and back where they need to be for childcare, a lot of running around. But first and foremost, it's about the children's future and their outcomes in life. So with our investments in education since 2003, our free textbooks, our elimination of school fees, full-day kindergarten, and other investments, we have the lowest pupil-teacher ratio in the entire country. And I don't know how many people know that, and it's probably because we don't do a good enough job of telling people. But that's really important when you're trying to attract people to your province. And we need a lot of workers, as we said, and this is one of our selling features that we need to do a better job of selling, because I know for any of you, when you're looking to move to an area, what's the 3 things you ask about? Is education, healthcare, and the crime rate. So that's something we can brag about, and we should be bragging about. We have heard from parents, teachers, and stakeholders about the need for increased student assistance support. And we are providing an additional $1 million in this year's budget. And this is for students with identified needs that need extra help in the classroom. So this $1 million will provide another 43,000 hours of assistance for children. And this is a big one that I heard a lot about from my caucus colleagues and from parents going around the province. Children are certainly impacted by the choices that we make in healthcare as well. And one of the other big things that we heard about is the need to increase assessment and treatment for children with autism and other developmental conditions. We have invested significantly into autism and supports around that, but our investment this year is even larger. We will be hiring 22 new staff, and that will be going up to 30 new staff in next year to get the wait times down and get the treatment that's required. I was reading some research that if you get the children early enough, and when we came into government, the ABA program was for kindergarten, and we have now expanded that up as far as grade 3. But if you get the children diagnosed early and get them into the treatment plan, by the time they're 7 years old, they can be integrated into the regular school system. So if you can do that for even one child, it's money well invested. But the fact that 30% can be streamlined in the regular program is, we can't afford not to do it for our children. Dialysis remains an important priority for our government, and one of the things I heard around the province about healthcare is it's important. We have an aging society, and it wasn't necessarily about spending more in healthcare. What I heard was people wanted to spend the money more wisely. So one of the things we're doing this year is investing an additional $500,000 to enhance the provincial home dialysis program, so people will no longer need to travel for dialysis, but they're also more comfortable in their homes, and certainly a more affordable way of delivering dialysis. This next one I'm going to talk about is one that we've all heard a lot about, certainly all of us as MHAs. But post-budget, it's the second thing that I heard the most about. First was full-day kindergarten, and the second one was this one. And it's the Medical Transportation Assistance Program. We made significant enhancements this year. The accommodations cap has been increased from $1,500 to $3,000. The threshold for being reimbursed for kilometers was reduced from 2,500 kilometers down to 1,500 kilometers. We increased the mileage rate, and we decreased the threshold, so now you will be reimbursed for 75% of eligible expenses after $3,000 as compared to 65% after $5,000. When people have to travel for health care, they shouldn't have to have that financial worry and that financial burden. So this will go a long way in helping that, so families can focus on what they need to in very times of need. As I said, we've heard a lot from pre-budget and post-budget, and it's really important that we listen to the public. And healthcare, one of the things that always comes up is healthcare and cancer drugs. So we have invested another $8.5 million this year into cancer drugs. primarily for prostate and breast cancer. And again, that's money that we can't afford not to invest in, because certainly extending a person's life and making life more comfortable and hopefully saving a life is money that is, it's a no-brainer. Other things we've done in healthcare this year in the budget, we've increased the amount to cover growth in the home support program. We've increased the monthly subsidy to personal care homes and community care homes from $1,850 a month to $1,950 a month. We've improved access to occupational therapy and physiotherapy services in the community. This is a big one that I heard about, and how to better spend your healthcare dollars to get people out of the acute care beds back into their homes sooner and get the support that they need in their home. We've increased the monthly rate for alternate family care homes, and for any of you who know these people who do this work in the community, the work that they do is valuable. We couldn't do it without them, so we provided an increase there. And for any of you who have been to an emergency room lately, we know that wait times are an issue, and there has been a lot of work done in the Department of Health to reduce wait times. But specifically in the budget this year, we've increased the number of nurses to deal with emergency wait times. And I spoke to Debbie Ford about this one myself, and she said it's one of the biggest pressures for her members. As I said, there are many things I can talk to you about tonight, and these are some of the highlights which I thought were important for you as a chamber and for your residents and communities. But before I close, I certainly would like to acknowledge all of you in the room tonight, and for all the work that you do and for all the input that you give us as a government. It is Volunteer Week, as I said, and what you do for yourselves, your families, your communities, and your regions is invaluable. And as I said, you know, Premier Marshall said when he was sworn in, we want to hear from you, and we want you to know that we are listening. And, you know, while I don't get to hear from people directly, I do want you to know that I do get to hear from you indirectly through your MHA, through Ross. We have many conversations, and he's a very valuable MHA. We're very lucky to have him, and you're very lucky to have him. And I hope you're pleased with this year's budget. I hope that you see that it is an investment in many ways into our future, and these are some of the things that were important to people, were important to us, and were investments that will only pay off many dividends in the future. So thank you once again for the opportunity to be here this evening. I truly enjoy getting around the province and really like intimate groups like this, because it gives me an opportunity to get to speak to all of you a little more. I got to meet a lot of you before the dinner, and for those who I haven't, I'm sticking around if you want to have a chat afterwards. But thank you again to the Chamber of Commerce for all the work that you do. Our region wouldn't be as vibrant and thriving as it is without people such as yourselves and the members that make up the Chamber. So again, thank you everyone. Safe travels back tonight.